What a crazy fight, right?
It was insane because Charles Oliveira, we've seen him grow through the UFC. Now, here's the thing, Ariel. That first round showed how far he has come. Because in those situations, generally, he does not do well. Generally, when things go sideways, he just lets them continue to go in the direction that they're going. On Saturday, he was able to correct it, right? He was able to withstand the storm and build his way back. And I just think that that fight was it was such an example of what mixed martial arts is. Because Henry Hoof could not be happier in the corner of Michael Chandler. To 19 seconds later, they're wrapping the belt around the other guy. It was crazy, and shows why MMA is the best sport in the world. And it shows that Du Bronx is truly not the same guy that he was before.
Okay, 2 follow-up questions. What went wrong for Chandler? I mean, it looked like he was literally seconds away from winning that fight. How did he not get it done? Why did he not get it done?
You know, I think Michael Chandler should have allowed Charles Oliveira to stand up in the first round because he had Oliveira backing up. He had Oliveira retreating. And by getting on top of a jiu-jitsu guy, an expert like Oliveira, he can really limit the damage. So even though it may seem as though you're building on the lead that you have, you really are kind of playing this game, allowing him to just rest and recover. He let Oliveira get back to the stool. And in the corner of Oliveira, the message had to be, don't back up anymore. You've got to take the center. You cannot retreat from this guy because that is where he's landing these big shots. I think if he would have let him get up to his feet before Charles was ever able to get back to the corner and digest the message from his coaches, he might have knocked him out in the first round. But after he got back to his coaches, they were able to kind of get him to calm down. You saw Oliveira go right to the center in the second round and just engage Chandler in the fist, and he landed that beautiful left hook. I think it was just a matter of him getting excited and also just not allowing him back up when I feel like he should have.
Michael Chandler did a lot of good in that first round. I mean, also, in addition to almost finishing Oliveira, I mean, he was locked into that rear naked choke. It looked like it was about to be lights out for him midway through that first round, and he got out of it with his incredible strength and power. I mean, the whole thing was just frenetic. It was amazing to watch. It was amazing to see from beginning to end. The second round was just a crazy, crazy finish. And so, DC, let me also ask you, how does this happen? How does a guy who starts his UFC career 10-8 with 1 no contest turn into this? He's now won 9 in a row. He now has the most finishes in UFC history. He now has still the most subs in UFC history. I mean, this is an unbelievable run for a guy who looked like he couldn't figure out what weight class he should be in, a guy who couldn't figure out, you know, is he 151, 145? When he's 145, he's missing weight. When he's 155, he's losing fights that it looks like he should have won. He lost to Paul Felder in 2017. He's now won every single fight since then. How does this happen? Because this doesn't happen in boxing. Like, you start a career, or you go on a run of 10-8-1, you don't turn it around. You don't end up like this. Why does this happen in MMA, and how did this happen to Charles Oliveira?
Because MMA is the best sport in the world, right? You never give up on yourself. I think we saw that with Jan Blachowicz, right? The fights that he has lost and become the champion in the way that he is now today. And we've seen it with Charles Oliveira. I feel like he's just matured, man. Not only matured physically and as an athlete, he's matured as a human being because, dude, I'm telling you, the knock on Charles Oliveira was that he could be spectacular, but he also could be a bit of a quitter, for lack of a better word. If you pressured him, if you beat on him, you could get him to question himself and just kind of give up. Charles Oliveira today does not give up on himself in any situation. But Charles Oliveira has also developed his stand-up to the point that he can not only grapple with the best fighters in the world, he can stand and strike with the best fighters in the world. I mean, he is so technically proficient. He is so good with everything that he does that there is no weakness anymore. The left hook was picture perfect, Ariel. I mean, I've not seen a left hook thrown so beautifully in mixed martial arts in a really long time. Because when he threw it, there was no load up. When he threw it, it went right to the target. His right hand was exactly where it needed to be at the chin. So when Chandler was throwing his left hook, he would have landed, but landed up against the hand or the fist of Charles Oliveira, whereas Chandler's hands were a little low, so Oliveira's got to the spot and dropped him. And I just think that he does so many things the right way now that it's hard to find a way to beat Du Bronx. And it's going to be very difficult to get the belt off of him. I was very impressed with Charles Oliveira. Just a fantastic fighter. And like you said, that was a win for Chandler in the first round, getting out of those submission attempts because not many people do. But ultimately, the night belonged to Charles Oliveira, and what a celebration, the emotion. You can see that for all that he had done, that was the crowning achievement. And if there was any doubt left in his mind, that just shows that he's a tough out, man. It'd be hard to beat this guy.
Yeah, and I'd also be remiss if I don't mention that he made history in this regard. 28th UFC fight. He breaks Michael Bisping's record for most fights needed to win undisputed gold. 26 it was for Michael back at UFC 199 against Luke Rockhold. This is 28th fight, an unbelievable achievement. If you're newer to MMA, you're looking at this guy and you're saying, yeah, of course he's great. Like, what's the big deal? No, no, no. If you were watching him 5-6 years ago, losing some of those fights, no one thought that he would turn into this. No one thought he'd be able to put it all together like this. And it wouldn't be a big Charles Oliveira fight if he doesn't talk about going back down to 145 afterwards. This guy is fixated on the idea of fighting 145. I'm like, yo, man, you're the best. What are you doing? Stop with the 145. You couldn't make the weight at 145. Why are you so fixated on this idea of fighting at 145? What did he say when he was like staring at Joe Rogan and jumped over the cage? Could you make out what he was saying to you guys?
He was yelling, surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. Because you remember Michael Chandler said that when he won, there's a new contender in the lightweight division. That's what he was saying. Surprise, surprise. And he's like shaking Joe's hand. And it's almost like we have no horse in the race, right? But when you see a guy break through like that, we're like slapping him on his back, like almost like engaging in the celebration. When in reality, like, I didn't like that Michael Chandler lost. I didn't really care that Charles Oliveira won. But when you watch someone break through, when you know what the kid's been through, you kind of like feel good for him. And he was just over the moon, man. He had blood on Dana. There was blood on our notes. Charles Oliveira, man, he's a sweetheart of a man. And now he's a UFC champion. And Brazil is back, right? Brazil's back. Brazil's got 3 champions now. You know, they got him, they got Davison, and Amanda. For a long time, it seemed as though Brazil was the home of mixed martial arts. And now they're back at the forefront.
I'm really happy that you mentioned those two things because, yes, it did seem like there was this narrative not that long ago that Brazilian MMA was on the downswing, that it was only Amanda, that the male Brazilian fighters, weren't doing their part, that, the days of Anderson and Junior Dos Santos and all these guys, like those days are over, and there was fresh blood. And all of a sudden you have a flyweight champion, you have a lightweight champion, oh, by the way, maybe the deepest weight class in the UFC, and you have Amanda still doing her thing. But you also mentioned something about Charles that is worth repeating. He is a sweetheart. This guy, nicknamed Du Bronx because of the favela that he comes from, still lives in the favela, goes out Christmas, posted some things, went out and gave everyone presents after his win over Tony Ferguson. This man is not someone who has talked a lot about the money fight, talked a lot about, red panty night and all this stuff. He seems like a really grounded and centered person. He seems like the kind of person that is very true to his roots. That's not going to change now that he's a UFC champion. And what I love so much about this particular story isn't necessarily that, he overcame that slow start, 10-8-1, the mishaps on the scale, the 4, missed weights and all that stuff. It's that this man stuck to his guns, DC. There was a time a couple months ago where they tried to get him to fight Michael Chandler in a non-title fight on very short notice, and he said, no, I'm waiting for a title fight. And then there was word that maybe he was in the doghouse. And look how everything turned out. Poirier goes and takes the Conor fight. Khabib retires. He gets his shot. He stuck to his guns. He got the belt, and now he could call himself the best in the world. And that emotion afterwards was beautiful. It was just a really great moment for people who have been watching this man for the past decade plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, there was a time where you and I discussed on the show, maybe he was going to be the odd man out, right? Because of the approach he was taking, it looked like Charles was going to be the guy on the outs. I myself called for Justin Gaethje to fight for the belt. Now I understand why, because now you got a guy that never lost to Khabib as the champion, right? You got a guy, a fresh guy, as the champion, because now it leaves questions, right? Whether or not people believe that Charles could beat Khabib, you never got to see it. So now there's a question as to whether or not this new champion, how he would have fared against the old champion. So I get why Gaethje wasn't in there. But the reality is, Charles Oliveira, proud Brazilian, loves where he's from, takes care of the people that have supported him from day one, and now is the champion of the world. Look, man, not many people are willing to bet on themselves. Charles Oliveira bet on himself, and ultimately it worked out. So many times, in so many instances, you do that, and it goes in the opposite direction, and you have questions as to why. What now? It worked out for Duke Bronx, and it could not have worked out for a better person.
Yeah, it was shades of Jose Aldo when he jumped into the crowd and was celebrating with his people. Oliveira got to do the same. The emotions afterwards was great. And you know, hard not to feel for Michael Chandler. Important to note, this man has been here before. He has stumbled before. You know, this is a guy who lost to Will Brooks 7 years ago twice. He lost to Brent Primus. Madison Square Garden was knocked out by Patricia Bell. What do you want to say, DC? I'm trying to set up the scene for Michael Chandler here, and you're getting all crazy. What do you want to say?
Yeah, no, because you mentioned one thing. You said 10-8 in round one. How can we have to discuss this, right? We have to discuss that 10-8 in round one. Because Michael Chandler won that round. But when Charles Oliveira gets you down, takes your back, does good things in the round, how in the world are you scoring that 10-8 as a judge? Because the reality is judges are so afraid and they really don't want to give a 10-7 round. But if that is a 10-8 round, what is worse? What do you have to do in order to go 10-7? Because if you recall, when Glover Teixeira beat Anthony Smith, and Glover Teixeira busted his tooth out of his mouth, that was a 10-8 round. How in the world can you judge these two rounds the same whenever one was an absolute beating and the other was a competitive round? I believe that in judging, when you take the responsibility, and I know they wanted to relax the ways that people are scoring 10-8s. When you take the responsibility, you have to be very careful because they were about to mess up that fight. Had that gone 5 rounds, you would have had Charles Oliveira down 2 rounds after a very competitive round. You are taking responsibility for people's livelihoods and their careers. You have to watch carefully, watch closely, and truly understand what you're watching. It's crazy that they scored that 10-8.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.